You guys, Erin here. I am back with another moon update for you. I'm going to be talking about the full moon we've got coming up here on Tuesday, August 1st. This peaks at 11:31 a.m. Pacific time, and this full moon is in the sign of Aquarius, 9 degrees Aquarius. Now, this is kind of an important full moon because some of you might remember back in January when we had the first new moon of 2023. That was the new moon in the sign of Aquarius. Now, this is the full moon in the sign of Aquarius. This is the peak of that growth cycle. Now, we are going into the age of Aquarius. So this is a really important energy to get comfortable with and to get familiar with. And so going back to that new moon, many people were out there encouraging people to write down what kind of growth or what kind of new beginnings you want to experience that are related to this sign of Aquarius. Now, this is the time to honor that growth. This is a time to think back. How have I grown in these ways that are related to this sign of Aquarius? But it's also a time, as soon as this moon begins to wane, meaning if it peaks at 11:31 a.m. Pacific time on Tuesday, August 1st, by 11:32, the moon's starting to get smaller, it's starting to wane. That's the time to let go of any Aquarius energy that you may have picked up on that is not serving you. Okay, so what I'm going to do in this recording is I'm going to break down this sign of Aquarius for you. Very dynamic, very fascinating energy to understand. So I'm going to break down that sign of Aquarius for you. I will also pull up the chart and I'll show you some other prominent astrological forces that we will be receiving at the time of this full moon. And I'm also going to be talking about certain parts of the body that are ruled by the sign of Aquarius, because these parts of our body become more sensitive when the moon transits through the sign of Aquarius, but most prominently when it's a full moon in the sign of Aquarius. Now, a lot of people already know that Aquarius rules the calves. Well, there's a whole heck of a lot more to this zodiac sign than just the calves. There's some very important body part stuff that's going on at the time of this full moon. So I will talk about that. And I will also talk about some potential herbal remedies to help support these parts of our body during this lunar transit. And of course, I will be bringing up some stones that resonate well with the sign of Aquarius. I'm also just going to be talking about some stones that overall just support us through this full moon transit. Okay, so first of all, this sign of Aquarius, this is what we call the fixed air sign. And when I say fixed, I'm talking about an ability to do things in a steadfast way, to do things with consistency, okay? Now, the element of air has a lot to do with intellect, okay? The sign of Aquarius is a highly intellectual energy, sometimes recognized as the genius of the zodiac. Now, no, that does not mean that every single person who has their sign in Aquarius is a genius, but usually they can come up with some genius ideas out of nowhere. In fact, I have a very dear friend who's got her sun in Aquarius, and that's something that I'm always shocked by the ideas, these revolutionary ideas that she comes up with out of nowhere. And if you know who you are and you're watching this, I just love you to pieces for that, and for so many other reasons about this sign of Aquarius. It's so fascinating. Okay, the motto for the sign of Aquarius is I know, okay, because it does know. This is a sign that's about the future. It's about kind of out with the old, in with the new. In fact, it's ruled by Uranus and Saturn. Now, Uranus influences for all of us. Uranus up in the sky is always influencing abrupt changes, almost like spasmodic changes. It's a rebellious energy. What brings the against status quo type of energy. And that's very strong in part why Aquarius is how it is. It is against status quo, and it is very revolutionary, and it is very much out with the old, in with the new. Okay, but it's also ruled by Saturn, and Saturn kind of stabilizes it. Saturn has a lot to do with kind of bringing the rules and the regulations in, okay? Kind of stabilizes this highly electrical energy through this sign of Aquarius. Now, Aquarius is the water bearer, okay? And I know a lot of people which makes sense. You would think it's a water sign based on its name and based on the fact that it's the water bearer, but it's not. Again, it's an air sign. What's so interesting about this sign of Aquarius is that it will take the water bearer is holding the water. Now, in astrology, water is associated with emotions. Okay, what the water bearer does is it detaches the emotions and turns the water into pure information, then pours the water out. Water is always going to find its level and distribute evenly for all of humanity. And that's what the water bearer does. It pours out this information for all of humanity. Again, we're entering into this age of Aquarius. This is why we're being flooded with information, especially through the form of technology. That sign of Aquarius being ruled by Uranus has so much to do with technology and information coming through technology. Now, going back to this detaching from the emotions, one of the key words to describe this sign of Aquarius is detached. Okay. Now, what that's all about is it has this ability to detach from emotions. Now, again, you can be an Aquarius and still be a very emotional person. If your sun is in Aquarius and your moon is in Pisces or something, you could still be very emotional. But the sign in and of itself of Aquarius detaches from the emotions, but for a purpose, to understand the situation from a higher level of truth, from an intellectual perspective. Interestingly, the sign of Aquarius is very much directly associated with astrology. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that Uranus is its ruler and Uranus is the god of the sky. But also astrology is very mathematical. It's very scientific. And it has a lot to do with kind of picking up things through an antenna, that sort of thing. And I do notice a lot of my Aquarius clients, or at least maybe they get their Mercury in Aquarius, they tend to be able to understand the systems of astrology very well. Now, in astrology, this is one of my favorite things about astrology, is you can take a very emotional situation, a tragic situation, and you can pull up a chart in fact, you could pull up a few charts. You could pull up a sky clock chart for what's going on at that moment and then apply it to your own natal chart and make sense of it. Like, oh, geez, this is what's going on. Okay, there's a lesson I'm supposed to learn from this situation. Okay, that's very Aquarius energy, to detach from the emotions. Now, I'm not suggesting that people should just detach from emotions completely, but it can be very, especially for somebody who is extremely emotional and deals with, deep, sadness, to be able to understand things intellectually, to be able to understand, where's the lesson I need to learn from this situation. That's very Aquarius energy. Okay, so let's see here. The motto is, I know it's ruled by Uranus and Saturn. It is the water bearer. Okay, it's ruled by Uranus and Saturn. Hopefully you're getting the idea as to how dynamic this sign of Aquarius is. In fact, let me leave you with this as well. The sign of Aquarius is also, it's the sign of individuality, as in everybody gets to be their own incredibly unique self. Again, we're going into this age of Aquarius and we're seeing all these wild new styles, like people got this crazy makeup thing going on, and oh gosh, this thing is just showing up I have no idea why this is showing up in my Instagram feed, but like a fashion show where the dresses were being worn sideways and upside down and just totally bizarre things. But that's kind of Aquarius energy, just like, oh, I want to do something totally different here. Okay. But it's also the sign that tends to do things in groups, tends to be really good at doing things in groups. Okay. So it's like the group, the tribe, where everybody is totally different from each other. Everybody is completely their own unique individual self, but we still work together as a tribe. Okay. So that's very Aquarius energy. How have you grown in these ways? Again, this is a sign of technology. Okay. Maybe you've become more comfortable with using technology. Maybe you've been trying to figure out how to work with the digital currencies, or maybe you just got onto social media and you're figuring that out and how to do this. I have a family member who just figured out how to do an Instagram story. He was so excited about it. It was adorable. Maybe those types of things. You're kind of flowing into this age of Aquarius. Or again, maybe you've been working on kind of trying to detach from the emotional stuff to understand things intellectually. But again, as soon as this moon begins to wane, maybe you picked up on some of this Aquarius energy that's not serving you. Maybe you've been totally infatuated with your devices. Okay. Obviously that's, hopefully all of my listeners understand that that's not good for our body to be staring at a device, 8 hours a day, even honestly, 3 hours a day, which I'm guilty of. I have to for my work, but it's not good for our body. It's if you're somebody who is constantly online. And I do notice for some reason, a lot of people with moon in Aquarius tend to be very addicted to their devices. Okay. So if that's the case, if you've become kind of addicted to your device in some way, shape, or form, or addicted to technology, then it might be time to let some of that go. Okay. As soon as this moon begins to wane. hopefully you guys are getting the idea of this Aquarius energy here and how to honor this lunar transit. I'm going to go ahead and pull up the chart here so that we can start going through some of this stuff. Okay, so first of all, if you are new to my recordings, welcome and thank you for being here. What we're looking at here is I work with geocentric Western astrology. And with that said, we're looking at a snapshot of the tropical zodiac here. Okay, now I put Earth right here in the middle. We put us right here in the middle of this thing. And these guys right here are all the celestial bodies. Like here's the sun, here's Venus, here's Mercury, here's the sun. Over here is the moon. And by the way, if you take the time to look this stuff up based on your location, here's the moon, here's the symbol for the sign of Aquarius. And here's it's showing it's at 9 degrees Aquarius. And these little numbers here are the minutes, 15 minutes, okay? We don't need to focus on the minutes right now. But regardless, if you could see based on your location that the moon is at 9, for everybody, it's all at 9 degrees Aquarius. But say you're over on the East Coast, then the moon's going to be like more over here, okay? Or if you're over in the UK, the moon would be somewhere around here, but it's still going to be at 9 degrees Aquarius. We're all experiencing that. Now, moreover, of course, we all experience as a collective, but it's also incredibly unique to each and every one of us. Let's say if you have anything in your natal chart, your Mercury, your Mars, your Venus, whatever, near 9 degrees Aquarius, this is a very prominent energy that you're receiving. Or maybe opposing that at 9 degrees Leo, or maybe squaring it at 9 degrees Scorpio or Taurus, or maybe trining it at 9 degrees Gemini or Libra. Okay, there's so many little aspects that we can apply into your own natal chart. And I don't mean to intimidate anybody, because we learn this stuff by through baby steps, step by step by step. If this all is too much for you to try to apply it to your own natal chart, that's perfectly okay. Just focus on the Aquarius energy in and of itself. But a really good trick to learn, if you're a beginner and trying to figure this stuff out, is find out which house in your natal chart the sign of Aquarius rules or comes through. You can go to any free astrology website and calculate your natal chart. If you know approximately what time you were born, you're going to need your birth date, your birth time, and your birth location, and you're going to pull up something that looks somewhat like this. Okay, it's going to be a circle, and it's going to have all these little things that look like a slice of pie. Okay, and some of them are going to show a Placidus house system. If that's the case, you're going to need to see exactly where 9 degrees Aquarius comes through. But you want to see these are called the houses. Which house in your natal chart does the sign of Aquarius come through? Because that is the area of your life that this full moon is shining through. It could be coming through your 10th house, which is the house of career. It could be coming through your 2nd house, the house of money. It could be coming through your 3rd house. It could be coming through any one of these slices of pie. Now, and that is really the best trick to start to get familiar with your own natal chart. And again, if that's too much for you, that's perfectly okay. And you can always schedule a reading. This is one of my favorite things to do for readings, is to teach people how to figure this stuff out for yourself. You can schedule readings straight through erinwageastrology.com. All right, so back to this 9 degrees Aquarius full moon. So 9 degrees is, we're still in the first decan or decan, however you want to pronounce it, in this Aquarius energy. That means it's pretty pure Aquarian energy. This is it's not blending in with the other air signs yet. Once we get past 10 degrees, then it blends in with other zodiac signs. So this is pretty pure Aquarian energy. I do think a lot of people are going to be unintentionally drawn to their electronic devices with this full moon. It's a really good idea to just be very careful about that. I will mention some gemstones at the end here to help protect ourselves, because our electromagnetic, this is a very electrical energy. In fact, if you look at the glyph, the symbol for the sign of Aquarius, a lot of people will say that's the water waves from the water bear, but it's, at least from my understanding, it's more like radio waves. This is a very electrical kind of energy. And all of us, our electromagnetic field becomes more sensitive when the moon transits through the sign of Aquarius. Keep that in mind. Okay, so over here, we've got the sun and Leo. This is one of my favorite signs of the zodiac, the sign of Leo. And I think it's because I just love summertime, okay? Leo represents, it's the middle of summer. It's the fixed fire sign, the fixed part of summer, right smack in the middle of summer. Leo energy tends to have great vitality. It rules the heart. It's such a strong, courageous energy that represents royalty and leadership energy, okay? So we're all receiving the sun going through the sign of Leo. That's another thing. Where's the sign of Leo in your chart? Because wherever it is, the sun's shining through there. It could be coming through your ninth house, your house of higher learning, and the sun's up there shining his light in your house of higher learning. And here you are experiencing higher learning, learning astrology. Okay, so there's that. Now we'll move on to Venus. Venus is getting a lot of hype right now because she's in retrograde. Personally, I don't really trip out on Venus retrograde too hard. Let's just put it, I mean, it's going to be very unique to each and every one of us. If you have anything prominent in your natal chart in the sign of Leo, Venus is going to retrograde over it. And that Venus represents basically love, beauty, relationships, harmony, things like poetry, romance, anything that's aesthetically pleasing is very Venetian energy. And when she's going retrograde, it's kind of a good idea to like reevaluate any of those things. But again, if you've got something in your natal chart in the sign of Leo and Venus is retrograding over it, you can apply it to whatever the energy of that particular celestial body is. Okay. But overall, Venus is, she is struggling a little bit because she is in retrograde. She's also got a yod going over here to Pluto and Neptune, which can make things a little confusing. With all those Venus things that I, just mentioned here, love, beauty, relationships, harmony, getting along, any female, except for mother is mom, but sister, your best friend who's a girl, your girlfriend, whatever, that's Venus. When she's kind of retrograding and experiencing a yod over to Pluto and Neptune, things might be a little bit confusing, and it's a good time to reevaluate those things. I'll just leave that there. Okay, now Mercury will be in Virgo. Woohoo! I like Mercury in Virgo a lot because Mercury rules Virgo. Mercury likes to be in the sign of Virgo because he's like, I get to function the way I want to. I get to be organized. I get to pay attention to all the little details of things. Some people's nervous systems might be a little on overdrive because the sign of Virgo has a lot to do with our nervous system, and also Mercury has a huge influence on our nervous system. So some people's nervous systems might be a little bit wild during this transit, especially because Mercury is opposing Saturn down here. Wow, that's a very strong opposition. But in some ways, that can be a good thing. Mercury and Saturn can get along, okay? Because Saturn is like, Mercury's more like intellect, buzzy in the mind, making like ideas occur and make us communicate, that sort of thing. And Saturn's like, slow down, buddy. Let's concentrate. A lot of people who have it in their natal chart, Mercury opposing Saturn can have a really, not everyone, because there's things that can counteract this, but a lot of them can have great concentration abilities because that's Saturn. Saturn slows things down. He was restricting things. And not only that, but I'm actually kind of liking this, to be honest with you, because Saturn going through Pisces, not to say Saturn's great going through the sign of Pisces, but Pisces is very mystical and flowy and kind of the whole, the oneness, okay? Where Virgo, especially Mercury in Virgo, is more like little things. And they're kind of having this conversation where they can, again, just kind of, Saturn is like, slow down and look at the whole big picture. Okay, so there's that. Now, Mars going through Virgo. All right, so I might have mentioned this in a previous video, I'm not sure, but I have a friend that is like the perfect, like every time I see Mars in Virgo, I'm like, oh yeah, that's her, because Mars rules how we put things into action. And Virgo is the sign of perfectionism. Virgo wants things to be organized and perfect, that sort of thing. And this friend of mine has incredible abilities to keep a shop that she works for, everything organized to a T, just everything's perfect. So that could be going on. Some people could be experiencing, again, so much of this depends on your own natal chart, but some people might be experiencing this, drive to get things tidy. Well, Mars is going through Virgo. But another thing to consider is that for some people, Virgo has a huge influence on our intestines, okay? And Mars could be creating some inflammation going on in the intestines, so just be really mindful of that. Okay, now also, where should we go next? Let's go on up here to Uranus going through Taurus. So we've talked so much about this. Uranus going through Taurus is bringing these, Uranus is Aquarius's ruler that makes it, revolutionary, makes it rebellious, okay? Rules technology, and going to that sign of Taurus. Taurus rules financial systems. Taurus rules money, also has a lot to do with our agricultural systems. And so Uranus is like making changes here, making changes there. That's what it's doing. Okay. And we've got Jupiter here, which is kind of getting a little bit closer. He's about 9 degrees away from Uranus, where Jupiter kind of makes it a bigger deal. I kind of feel like when Jupiter hits Uranus later on this year, something might happen. I haven't looked too deeply into this, but something very well could happen with digital currencies or overall banking systems, because that's really what the sign of Taurus has a lot to do with. Also has a lot to do with food. The sign of Taurus rules this part of the body, has a tendency to enjoy food, quality food. Might want to be a little bit careful about, what we're putting in our bodies. I mean, honestly, it's a really good idea to always be careful about not putting junk into our bodies. Maybe while Jupiter's going through the sign of Taurus, it's a really good idea to kind of pay attention to that. And Jupiter would love quality food. Okay. So quality things going into our body. All right. And Jupiter's going to be in Taurus. I believe it's all the way till April of next year, something like that. All right. Now let's move on to these nodes. Okay. So the North Node is officially in that sign of Aries, and the South Node is officially in the sign of Libra. Okay. So the North Node, I'm going to try not to get repetitive because I say this all the time. The North Node is what brings energy into Earth. It's the valve that pumps energy into Earth. It is now, as of July 17th, is officially in the sign of Aries all the way until January of 2025. Aries is the sign of action. It's the sign of self. It's the warrior. Okay, so a lot of people, especially if you've got something, prominent in your natal chart near 28 degrees Aries, this could go all the way down to 22 degrees Aries. Something's going on. The universe is dumping energy onto you. Okay. In kind of a warrior type of way. I'll go deeper into this nodal transit as we approach eclipse season, because the nodes are what make eclipses happen. But overall, as of right now, we're suddenly receiving the dragon's head. That's the North Node. The dragon's head is bringing energy in through the sign of Aries. South Node, that's what takes energy out. And it's going through the sign of Libra. Now, Libra is the sign of justice. It's the sign of fairness. It's the sign of balance. It's the sign of harmony. Okay. And so some of those things might be draining out. And again, that South Node will also be in the sign of Libra all the way until January of 2025. But if we want to look at the positive aspect of this, it's like we're receiving that. Aries is the sign of self, time to take care of ourselves, focus on ourselves. Okay. And maybe let the sign of Libra can also have a lot to do with beauty and charm, and kind of maybe that needs to drain out a little bit. And maybe it's time to pick up the warrior type attitude while this North Node's going through the sign of Aries. Again, this is going to be so incredibly unique to each and every one of us. Okay. So there's that. And as I've mentioned so many times, Chiron going through Aries. Again, Aries is the sign of self. Chiron's like, hey, let's heal the self. Chiron is a wounded healer. Let's heal the self. Okay. Neptune going through Pisces. We've talked about this. This is so mystical and so dreamy and so lovely and so spiritual, and a very sort of almost like being high kind of energy when Neptune's going through Pisces. And that can be very fun, but it can also be, it's just a good idea until Neptune's out of Pisces. It's a really good idea. I think that's all the way till it's either late 2026 or early 2027. Neptune's going through Pisces. It's a very good idea to check in with yourself, check in with reality every once in a while. Make sure that you are not being deceived. This Neptune and Pisces is like charlatan kind of energy. But again, it's also super spiritual. If you have anything in your natal chart, and Neptune's retrograding, so he's like extra strong right now. If you've got anything in your natal chart near 27 degrees Pisces, it might be a little bit difficult to focus right now. Okay. It might be especially while Neptune's in retrograde, because that's what Neptune does. But your intuition might be heightened. Like example, if you've got your Mercury near 27 degrees Pisces, it's like you're tapped into other realms. You're feeling other things. You're kind of feeling your psychic porousness. You're able to feel things that other people aren't. Okay. If your Mars is at near 27 degrees Pisces, Mars, he wants us to take action. Well, Neptune, if you've got Mars near 27 degrees Pisces and Neptune sitting on your Mars, it's kind of like, whoa, I want to take action, but I also really just want to sit here and meditate or, get stoned or something like that, because that's Neptune's energy. So it's a good idea to embrace the goodness of that, to embrace the spiritual qualities that come from that, but also be very mindful that you're not getting swept away with, things that are too unearthly. Okay, so I hope that made sense. I do think Saturn, this is one reason I'm glad Saturn's going through Pisces, is because I do feel like Saturn's like, you're not going to get away with that. We are living this very physical, material world. You got to stay focused. Saturn going through Pisces is saying that. Okay, now Pluto is still retrograding through the sign of Capricorn. So we talked a lot about this. Pluto brings a very powerful transformational process, okay? Whatever zodiac sign Pluto is going through, he's bringing a death and rebirth process too, okay? Well, this sign of Capricorn, it's the sign that rules over things like authoritarian establishments, government, okay? Capricorn also rules over the structure of our civilization. There's a lot of turbulence going on there. Pluto is going to be doing, as I've mentioned so many times already, Pluto is going to be doing this dance. He's going to keep retrograding back into the sign of Capricorn for a little while. Then he's going to move forward again. He's going to move back into the sign of Aquarius where he was just back in March. Then he's going to retrograde back into Capricorn one more time and then finally move forward. And so basically, Pluto is doing a dance between the sign of Capricorn and the sign of Aquarius all the way until December of 2024. Now, isn't it interesting that we are having an election in 2024? I really do feel strongly that something turbulent is going to happen around that situation. I don't mean to sound scary. I mean, I'm one of those people that's like, I don't think the world's coming to an end at all. We're just going through some very, very powerful changes. Okay. And we got to just learn to flow through them. And Pluto's a pretty darn big key player in this transformational process. In fact, I'm just going to mention this. So a couple weeks ago, no, it was about a week and a half ago, I found, I better start back before this. About a month ago, I was going through the soil in my garden, mending the soil, and I found a little cocoon. It's a cocoon that came from, I guess, what is called oh boy, I forget. Anyways, it's a big hornworm, a tomato hornworm. They build these little cocoons in the soil, and that's where they mutate and become a moth. And eventually they're going to climb out of their cocoon and climb out of the soil and fly away as a moth. Well, so I found this cocoon, and I didn't, because it's something that could be damaging to my garden, I took it out. It could eat the vegetables and stuff. It can lay its eggs and they eat the tomatoes, whatever. So I take the cocoon and I put it in a separate pot in some soil and kept it a little bit moist. And I put it in a shady spot right outside my little sliding glass door and just kind of hoped for the best. Well, about a week and a half ago, I just happened to open up that sliding glass door and I see this like wiggling coming out of the dirt, coming out of the soil. And it was the moth. It was a big giant moth. I guess it's called a wolf moth. No, not a wolf, a hawk moth. It's called a hawk moth. I got to see the hawk moth coming out of this cocoon. And I thought to myself, now that is a beautiful transformational process. That is a legit transmutation. Like it mutated. It was a worm, basically, that went in, wrapped its shell around itself, completely died, basically, but not really. There's things that are called imaginal cells. For some of you who follow me on Instagram, you know that my handle is imaginal cell, and it has been since 2014, because I've always been fascinated by these imaginal cells. They're the only ones that survive this very like horrible, like basically this thing becomes mush inside the cocoon. But then the imaginal cells, they start talking to the new cells and saying, hey, we're going to create something new and powerful here. Okay. And that is so Pluto energy. And it was such a trip. I'm getting a little bit sidetracked here on personal notes, but it was such a trip because at that very moment I went, this is the beauty. This is the power that Pluto can create. And then just a couple of days later, I heard another astrologer, Rick Levine, I think his name is, was also equating Pluto to the process of, he actually was using butterflies, which is much more of a beautiful thing to think about than moths. But this moth was huge. And by the way, it eventually flew away and it crawled up on my arm. It was the most incredible experience ever. But that was what Pluto can do. Pluto destroys. Pluto completely creates a death and then a more powerful rebirth. Okay. And Pluto, that's what he's doing right now with the structure of our civilization. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that, you know, after 2024, we're all just going to be like moths flying around with wings, because I don't think that's the case at all. There's all these other things that are going on up in the sky. So it's not just Pluto, but that's what Pluto's doing. Pluto rules the psyche. Pluto rules what's going on the back burner, okay? And that is exactly what Pluto is doing to the structure of our civilization, including things like authoritarian establishments. Okay, enough rambling there. Oh, by the way, Pluto is squaring the nodes. There's a T-square going to Jupiter. There's a lot. I don't want to make this video too long, but there is some very intense energies going on at the time of this full moon. I'm going to leave that there. I think I covered all the most important things. Let's move on to body parts. Okay, so as I mentioned, the sign of Aquarius rules the calves, which obviously the calves are important. However, and it actually energy for Aquarius people, energy can kind of get stagnant in the calves. Okay. And to kind of help support that, let's see here. Ginkgo biloba is a really good one. That's also going to be stimulating for the brain. It brings the stagnant energy up from the lower parts of the legs up and can kind of create oxygen up in the mind. Okay. So that could be good for that. However, Aquarius also rules the electrical body. Okay. As I showed you guys, the sun is in the sign of Leo. Leo rules the heart. Okay. Aquarius and Leo are opposite each other. There's an organization called Heart Math that I believe is still in Boulder Creek, and they've done all kinds of like this Aquarius style inventions. The sign of Aquarius can be very much associated, especially with independent inventions. That's totally what Heart Math has been doing. They have figured out how to prove that there is an electrical field that's being produced from our heart, okay? And it goes out into basically a toroidal field. And that electrical field that is around us is ruled by the sign of Aquarius, okay? So that part of us becomes hypersensitive anytime the moon transits through the sign of Aquarius, but especially when it's a full moon. So what grounds electricity is minerals, okay? I mean, honestly, even just going out and putting your feet on earth, touching earth. I mean, geez, if you could get some kind of a clay like mud puddle. I did this once. I did this years ago and it was so fun. Where I live, some of the land is just basically clay. Okay. And it had just been raining and I kind of dug this hole and I just made this big mush pot of clay, like natural earth clay, and stuck my feet in it to ground myself out. And oh, it felt wonderful. Not only that, but my skin was so soft. That was right up to my knees too. So it was like the total Aquarius location of the body. However, just touching earth can be great, but also some herbs that have a heavy amount of minerals. I think probably my favorite one would be nettles. Okay, but there's so many. Horsetail. What's another one? Mullein. Mullei's also very, very full with minerals. Okay, so it just kind of depends on what you want to do here. By the way, I'm not a doctor, not claiming to be a doctor at all. I'm not trying to give you any kind of medical advice. I'm just telling you things that I have experienced for myself because I've learned them from my wonderful teachers over the years. Okay, now another one to mention here is rosemary. I actually just got some rosemary because we have tons that grow here. And this, I kid you not, like just smelling the rosemary, it's like you could be in a horrible mood and all of a sudden you smell rosemary and it's just so uplifting. Rosemary can be really good for the circulation, okay, in the blood. The sign of Aquarius also rules like the quality of the blood, not the veins is Venus, but the quality of our blood. In fact, a lot of people who've got a challenged sun in Aquarius will end up with like weird blood diseases. Okay. Well, and the circulation could be really poor in people if their sun in Aquarius. It's got so much to do, the circulation and the quality of the blood. Rosemary, just smelling rosemary can stimulate those things and getting, things moving, getting your whole body stimulated actually, but specifically for circulation of the blood and get the corrupt blood out, get it moving so it's not stagnant and stuck down in the calves. Okay, so let's see here. Next, we're going to talk about gemstones. So, of course, the dedicated zodiacal birthstone for Aquarius is amethyst. So I got a couple pieces of amethyst here. Amethyst is so beautiful. I don't think she would mind me saying this at all. I have a sister who's an Aquarius, and when we were kids, you know, our mother would give us our birthstone stuff for, you know, holidays or whatever. And I remember looking at her birthstone, the purple stone, and being like, oh, I wish that was my birthstone because it's so beautiful. But amethyst is a totally Aquarius energy. Okay. It can, like, I was talking about how this energy is kind of tapped into the future and foreseeing. Amethyst can actually, what's the word I'm looking for? Enhance this ability to kind of foresee, okay? And can also help keep you protected. One of the reasons that I love amethyst so much is because it's still kind of like clear and shiny, but it's still protective. In fact, the darker the amethyst is, the more protective it is. The lighter the amethyst is, like this one's pretty light. It's kind of dark, whatever. The lighter it is, the more amplifying it's going to be. But one of the reasons that I love amethyst so much is because it is protective, but it's also very amplifying. Okay. So if you're wanting to amplify your prayers, some of you know this by now, I pull out my journal, I write down the growth that I'm grateful for and what I want to let go of. I apply it to the area of my life in my natal chart that this is manifesting through. And I usually take 3 gemstones, and I put them on top of my journal. So taking something like this, that's going to protect my, you know, what I'm trying to manifest, it's going to protect my words, but also amplify them. Okay, now another one is Angelica. This really does resonate well with the sign of Aquarius, and it's just a beautiful stone. Okay, think about the word Angelica. Okay, oh boy, I'm going to wait. This is way too long if I go into details on this, but this can be a very protective stone as well, in kind of an angelic way. Okay, I have very, very strong feelings about the way the angels, the word angels actually comes from the word angles. Okay. And there's a lot of angles in astrology. And I think there's a strong tie there. In fact, I say with confidence that there's a strong tie there. Okay. So some very protective stones that resonate well with the sign of Aquarius. First of all, black tourmaline. Okay. Black tourmaline does not necessarily specifically resonate well with the sign of Aquarius. However, this is one that can be very protective for your electromagnetic field. And same with shungite. They kind of work 2 different ways. This is going to be a little bit more straight up protective of your electromagnetic field. This is going to also be not only protective, but cleansing as well. Okay, so what I like to do, again, what I'll probably do for my journal entry is I'll probably use a piece of black tourmaline to keep things protected and clean and that sort of thing, but also protecting myself from things like 5G, you know, sitting in front of my computer, that sort of thing. But also put some amethyst on my journal to help amplify, but also protect, and then tapping into the angles, the angels. Okay, so it's a lot. Okay, I'm going to leave that there. If you would like to schedule an astrology reading, please visit erinwageastrology.com. I do hope to hear from some of you, and until next time, namaste to all of you.